Howdy, this is PhantomStrider, and this is Boo. Though you don't really do much, do you, Boo? Well, you're my friend, so I like having you here anyway. But Boo here certainly isn't the first case of animation stepping into our real world. In fact, let's look right now when cartoons step through the fourth wall and into our reality. Interestingly, combining cartoons with live action goes back as early as 1914 with Gertie the Dinosaur. And while it often results in a bizarre, sometimes even smutty mess, these movies are occasionally so touching and powerful that they can blur the lines of reality. Whether they're subjectively good or bad, nothing quite grabs my attention like these mix-ups. So prepare for a stranger list than usual, as we check out the top 3 weirdest and best cartoon live-action mix-ups. For this list, I've tried to stick with cartoons that directly come to our real world, not just a segment of Dancing Penguins, as much as I love that movie. Anyway, on to the countdown. The third weirdest cartoon live-action mix-up is Osmosis Jones. I have never been so torn between animation and live action. If you only look at the animation of this movie, you get something creative, refreshing, and even somewhat educational.
Pliable cellular dynamics. What an ingenious defense mechanism.
But when they combine it with the real world, the live action segments are just horrendous. Basically, our live action character Frank, aka Bill Murray, is affected by a deadly virus, and a cartoon white blood cell named Jones has to stop that virus, plus a pill voiced by David Hyde Pierce, which is actually pretty awesome. It all leads to this wide-ranging labyrinth of ideas, socio-political jokes, and surprisingly educational scenes on the human body in the cartoon. But when we get the other live-action half, we have to wade through a bunch of gross-out, snot, vomit, and other bodily fluid jokes. Even the jokes that aren't related to gross-out are weak groaners.
The doctor says that he has a brain the size of a tangerine.
Whenever Frank's on screen, it just feels like this constant string of cringeworthy scenes attempting to embarrass the already reluctant actor. Maybe the director didn't like Bill Murray and just put these obnoxious, gross scenes in to try and hurt his career. I constantly feel like I'm just intruding on Bill's privacy whenever I watch this movie. But what bothered me the most is seeing the hurt and disgust in Frank's daughter's eyes. It just broke my heart. Frank is childish, oblivious, neglectful, and has trained his daughter to wait on him hand and foot, constantly embarrassing and disappointing her. Rather than ever being heartfelt, these live-action scenes are just revolting. But on the animation half, it's a whole different movie. It's clear as we delve into this human body's sentient cartoon world. A way higher level of creativity went into this. Ignoring the live-action half, this becomes a much better movie, and too creative a cartoon movie to not acknowledge. There's just too many creative ways our complex bacterial powerhouses of bodies are turned into vibrant, intricate worlds, subtly reflecting our own society. I would have enjoyed Osmosis Jones a lot more if it was just a cartoon, but either way, it deserves credit for being innovative and weird. And the third best cartoon live-action mix-up is SpongeBob Sponge Out of Water. You know what? Yeah. SpongeBob Sponge Out of Water is one of my favorite cartoon live-action mix-ups. When I first saw SpongeBob and the Bikini Bottom crew enter our real world, it was epic. The final battle between SpongeBob and the theme song pirate,
perfection,
integrates SpongeBob so well into our real world. In many of the shots, my adult eyes can't actually tell if he is really there or not. And every person in our world feels like they're honestly reacting to seeing SpongeBob and his crew appear, with understandable shock. Plankton, Sandy, Squidward, crabs, each character is given just the right amount of screen time in our real world. Seeing their zany superpowers in our world was just a delight. While a good portion of the movie is set in Bikini Bottom, the transitions between their world and our world felt seamless. SpongeBob and the Bikini Bottom crew jumped into our world with such an explosive energy that it made for an incredibly memorable final fight with the theme song pirate.
Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
And the second weirdest cartoon live-action mix-up is Monkeybone. Monkeybone is simply uncanny. And yes, that icy chill you might be feeling down your spine right now is normal.
Where's my body?
You mean my body?
Oh, crap!
That unnerving, confusing chill is a trademark of Henry Selick, the creator of Nightmare Before Christmas. Monkeybone is like being in one of those stress-induced fever dreams where your subconscious thinks it's giving you a nightmare, but it's so confused, muddled, and disoriented that it just ends up throwing at you an incoherent, dark, nonsensical barrage of images. In fact, we are watching our main character in a coma. Stu the cartoonist, aka Brendan Fraser, must escape his own dark dream world while fighting Monkeybone, the star he created for the most shoddy cartoon series I've seen in the past, well, let's be realistic, 5 weeks. Again, I find myself disliking the main character Stu. A bit like Frank, he's mostly just awkward and obnoxious in a bad way. But more importantly, the dream sequences are exactly what we'd expect from Henry Selick. He immerses the world of Monkeybone in a sea of supernatural, bizarre, and slightly grotesque. A lot of the imagery here is very creative, yet still sits in the uncanny valley. I often find it hard to tell if I'm looking at cartoons or real life in this. I can't guarantee Monkeybone will be an enjoyable, pleasant experience, but I can guarantee it'll be an experience. And the second best cartoon live-action mix-up is Enchanted. And of all the Disney movies, I very rarely hear people talk about Enchanted, and I've never quite gotten why. A Disney princess named Giselle comes from the cartoon world into our world and befriends a buttoned-down, all-business divorced dad named Robert. But what's nice about it is it's not just a traditional, just be more positive perspective. While I don't mind that philosophy, Enchanted is more about seeing both fantasy and reality. Robert introduces a bit of reality into Giselle's cartoon life, and Giselle introduces some more colour and hope into Robert's life. And I really like that balance. It's a movie that's basically the modern Disney philosophy in a nutshell, and it manages to recapture in both Giselle's behaviour and the animation that traditional Disney feel so well. I mean, the flaw to this cartoon live-action mix-up is that the story's pretty predictable, and some of the characters are pretty cliché. We know Giselle and Robert are gonna fall in love and probably learn some lessons from one another. But even if I can predict it, it's still what my emotions want to see. This is actually the only movie I can think of where a cartoon character and a real-world human cross dimensions and fall in love. Not just in lust, in love. And I just find watching that unfold very touching. And while I normally forget Disney songs not long after they happen, I find myself remembering a lot of the musical numbers in Enchanted.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe where I am right now.
And the live action is good, the actors are well chosen. In scenes like the ballroom dance scene, so much is said wordlessly through body language. What's most important though is at the end of Enchanted, I'm left with a warm feeling in my heart. Like there's this unspoken mutual acceptance of both fantasy and reality. And to me, that's a beautiful thing.
Is this a habit of yours? Falling off of stuff?
Only when you're around to catch me.
And without a doubt, the #1 weirdest cartoon live-action mix-up is Cool World. This movie, it's really, really weird. It's a fascinating, enticingly, incredibly bad mess. But honestly, I actually enjoyed it. Characters will just dance randomly for a solid minute for no real reason. But this is another case where I'm just so immersed in the colors and atmosphere that I don't even care. I love the bleak, twisted cartoon world. Look at that, even the buildings are bleak and literally twisted. So, what's the main story of Cool World? Well, I'll try and explain as best I can without getting this video flagged. Because Jeebus knows children can't hear about natural bodily urges and functions, no. But violence and gore, no, that's fine. Jack the cartoonist falls in, monkey love with his own scantily clad, well-endowed cartoon character.
Too hungry for what I got. Indulge your fantasies, Jack.
He finds himself sucked into the cartoon world and begins exploring the dangers of scootily pooping with cartoon characters and humans. Yes, you heard me right. They go there. Well, I've no problem with the movie discussing this, and hey, whatever floats your boat as long as you're not hurting anyone. It just feels like a really weird concept. The best way to describe Cool World is Roger Rabbit on drugs. starring Jessica Rabbit with no subtlety, with Brad Pitt for some reason.
And around here, everything goes. Everything except one thing.
You do not talk about Fight Club.
There are a ton of problems, obviously. Even though the art is incredibly creative, it often feels like the cartoons are just tacked over the top of the live action, rather than it feeling at all like they're interacting. Though I did find scenes like the bedroom scene with Holly and Jack felt pretty convincing. Actually, I found the main characters pretty charming in this one. Detective Frank and Jack feel pretty believable in their roles. Despite the story, Jack doesn't feel too perverted to me. He feels believable and understandable, like we can see the conflicting emotions and feelings in it. He feels human and still redeemable. And the voice actor for Holly does a fine job of getting both that sultriness, but a hint of tooniness across. Scenes feel intense and confusing, but that's the thing. Scenes make you feel something. And that's why I kind of actually like this movie. It feels real, it feels earnest, like the creator was trying to say something in his own weird way. Because the movie is a conflicting barrage of emotions. Cool World is simply a compelling, nonsensical, nightmarish string of consciousness that seems inspired by years of cartoon history and Rule 34. Cool World is a train wreck. But it's a really interesting train wreck. The sheer amount of imagination that went into this movie is honestly quite admirable. If you're over 18 and curious and don't mind something really bizarre, then you might find Cool World interesting. And before we get to number one, just a couple of quick honorable mentions. Space Jam. Even after all these years, I still find this movie okay. I can't fully justify it, I know it's a sellout movie. But this movie was everything I wanted to see as a kid. Basketball, Michael Jordan, Bugs Bunny, all in beautiful animation. Looney Tunes back in action. I'm not sure if the live action characters were given a bit too much screen time or what it was, but it just never worked to me. Even though Back in Action is technically the better movie, I actually enjoyed Space Jam a little more, but that's just my personal taste. Song of the South. This is a case where I can't quite call it an abysmal movie. Obviously, the implied slavery is horrible, but as for the movie itself, it's about what you'd expect from a 1946 Disney live-action movie. It was one of the first large-scale attempts to combine animation and live action, so of course it was going to look mushy and silly looking. And again, I like the song Zip-Diddy-Doo-Dah too much to be able to discount this movie completely. And obviously, the number one best cartoon live-action mix-up is Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Hide me, Eddie! Please! Get out of there! Don't let him find me!
I have something shameful to admit. When I first saw this movie when I was 7, I spent a good year thinking cartoons were real. Like, I actually thought they all lived in Toontown and Walt just hired them to come on set and act goony. The point being that Who Framed Roger Rabbit was such a seamless, engaging molding of toons in real life that I was completely fooled. What is so astonishing about this movie is that even when my adult, green screen trained eyes see this 1988 animation interacting with our world years later, I still feel like the characters are really there. When our main character Eddie Valiant finds Roger in his office, it really looks like Roger's right there with him. And if I didn't have a somewhat reasonable education and an okay grasp of reality, you could probably fool me with this even now. And on paper, this movie should not work. A hard-boiled murder plot combined with all this toniness and silliness. Somehow it made for a miraculous movie that still melts my heart every time I see it. The tones are this perfect balance of toony, yet still grounded in reality. And it always gives just the right amount of screen time to both humans and toons. And I love the timeless universal message about finding laughter in the bleakest of times.
Right. Our laugh can be a very powerful thing.
And all the characters are made likable. You can understand why Eddie's a sourpuss after his brother was murdered by a toon, but you can also see that Roger's really well-meaning. So the two end up working together perfectly on set, despite one not actually being there. Seriously, if you look behind the scenes, the dedication they put into making this feel real is amazing. This movie should not have worked, but it miraculously did. And it's turned out to be one of the top 250 movies of all time. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a movie that hits me deeply on a child level and an adult level. It was a perfect combination of gritty detective drama combined with the bringing to life of so many childhood characters. It's not only one of my favorite movies, it's obviously the best cartoon live action mix-up To me, there's something unworldly, yet beautiful, about seeing these animated characters I know aren't real suddenly appear in real life, interacting with us like it's the most normal thing in the world for them. It just brings alive this childhood excitement when I see it. How will us humans respond to these toons, or how will they respond to us for that matter? On the occasions I do get to see our world and cartoons cross the fourth wall and meet, even if they're bad, it's often a bizarre but riveting experience. And if you think I missed a particularly weird or awesome cartoon live-action mix-up, feel free to leave your own thoughts in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Welcome to the end of the video. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Originally this actually started out as a worst and best list, but I realized all the worst were actually really creative in their animation elements and deserve credit for that. Anyway, I'll see you next time.